Yep, the president's been giving speeches about jobs, and we all would like to see better policies here in Washington to create the environment for job growth. He's been criticized for not coming up with any new ideas, and apparently today he's going to have his first new one, and that will be to not make the corporate tax reform revenue neutral, but rather to take some of the funds out of corporate tax reform and use it for other purposes. And look, however good those purposes might be, we have a situation now in our country where our business tax code is so uncompetitive, antiquated, outdated, that we are losing investment, jobs, headquarters, even as we stand here today. It's urgent that we address this. And one thing that I have complimented the president on in the last couple of years is the fact that, having recognized that, he has said that business tax reform ought to be revenue neutral, meaning that as you broaden the base, in other words, get rid of some of the preferences, some would call loopholes, that you would lower the rate to make our tax code competitive. We now have the highest rate in the developed world. We also have a non-competitive international system where almost all of our competitors have gone to a system that enables them to favor their companies over ours. And again, this is why you see companies moving offshore, you see investment going offshore, you see a movement of capital offshore. So we were discouraged this morning to hear that now the president seems to be backtracking on that commitment to say that whatever base broadening occurs, in other words, reducing these preferences and these loopholes, would be invested in lowering the rate, which has been his consistent position. In 2011, Secretary Geithner took that position. In February 2012, there was a white paper from Treasury taking that position. And of course, current Secretary of the Treasury, Jack Lew, has taken that position in testimony. The president has talked about it. So we're looking forward to seeing the details of this proposal. But if we really want to create jobs, we've got to have a more competitive tax code. And Senator Hatch is exactly right. It's not just about the so-called C corporations. It's also about the majority of American companies that pay their taxes as individuals. So there has to be both individual tax reform, simplification, a more competitive structure, and reform on the business side. We're prepared to work with the president on that. I thought we were making some pretty good progress, honestly, in finding a consensus about how to deal with the business side. And again, we need to do it, and do it soon, to avoid even a further erosion. The Congressional Budget Office recently did an analysis of the corporate tax reform ideas. And one thing they said was that by reducing the corporate rate, going to a more competitive system on the business side, the beneficiaries will be those very middle-class workers that the president is talking about helping. Why? Because their wages, their benefits, and their job prospects will be improved. That's what we ought to be doing here in the Congress, working with the president, and we're prepared to do that, not based on politics and not trying to make this into a partisan issue, but instead to work together on behalf of growing this economy and creating the jobs in the weakest economic recovery we've ever had in this country since the Great Depression.